Hi, it's Fab Poli here. Welcome back to another episode of Biz Jet TV. Today we're going to starting a new series. We're going to be doing once a week. We're going to be looking at an accident that happened to a private jet and sort of dissecting the accident, seeing what we can learn from the accident, and hopefully that will help you become safer. And if you're watching this and you're not a pilot, you'll listen to the kind of things that do happen and that do cause private jet accidents, and this will make you think when you're selecting your pilots, or if your pilots knock on the door asking for more training, you'll sort of have more of an understanding of the importance of training and certain type of training, and also hiring certain type of pilots. Now, the accident we're going to be talking about today is happened in Aspen. Before we get into the accident, if you haven't subscribed to Biz Jet TV, I encourage you to subscribe to Biz Jet TV. The accident we're going to talk about it was a Challenger 601 flying into Aspen, Colorado in 2014. It was coming in from Mexico. Now, the plane did crash, unfortunately. There were 3 people on board. 1 person died and the other 2 got severely injured. The 3 people on board were all pilots. 2 were flying and 1 was on the jump seat. Now, first thing I'd like to talk about is the fact that Aspen is in Colorado, in the mountains, and the elevation of the airport, elevation meaning the how far from sea level the airport is, it was 7,800 feet. That means that the airport is 7,800 feet above sea level. Now, when you are going into an airport that is in the mountains at, 5,800 like Samaritz or 7,800 like Aspen, the challenge is that airplanes behave differently at altitude. And especially when you're coming into landing, which is the most delicate phase of the flight, with the airplane behaving differently, you have to be aware of this. Okay, so this is very, very important. Now, challenges into Aspen, obviously in the winter you get bad weather. This was in the winter. In the summer you get hot weather, which creates all other types of problems. But mainly, it's tricky. The pilots should have simulator training specifically for Aspen. That's my view. But anyway, let's look at the pilot's experience. We had 3 pilots here flying. 2 were flying, 1 was on the jump seat. They were very experienced. They came from the airlines. They've flown a lot of Airbus 320 time, about 8,000 hours one of them had in the 320. 1 pilot had 17,000 hours, the other 22,000 hours. So they were both experienced, and the guy in the jump seat had a lot of Challenger time. The 2 guys up front that were flying only just recently got type rated, which means qualified to fly the Challenger 601. They had 14 hours in the aeroplane, so that's not much. So they weren't that familiar with the airplane. And then having flown Airbus, which is more modern technology, it's fly-by-wire side stick, going back to conventional aeroplane, that is something which I think could have played a contributing factor into it. But bear in mind, when I talked about the Swiss cheese model in a previous video, and if you haven't seen that, click on the link above, because that's interesting. There's always a number of factors that cause an accident. So the pilot experience was there, but they had transitioned from Airbus A320 flying to a Challenger, and they only had 14 hours. They were going to an airport which was challenging, 7,800 feet elevation, into bad weather. So you see where the links on the error chain are now starting to rack up. Now they come in for a first approach. It wasn't working well. They did a go around or missed approach. They went back up again. The pilots that were flying weren't happy with the situation. There were gusty winds. There was wind shear reported and experienced. They actually came in on the first approach. They reported 35 knot tailwind. Now bear in mind that airplanes take off and land with headwinds. And even on a 737-800, which I've operated personally, I've landed the 737-800 with a 10 knot tailwind, and I'm telling you, it didn't like it. It didn't like it. And that's a big aeroplane, a lot bigger than a Challenger 601. So anyway, they came round. The 2 pilots weren't too happy at giving it another go. But the guy on the jump seat said, yeah, go and set yourself up for another approach. They spoke to air traffic control. They came round for another approach. An airplane ahead of them was a Lear 35, issued a PIREP. PIREP means pilot report, saying that they experienced, at 2 miles out, they experienced a loss of 10 knots on the airspeed, which is quite big. And if you look at stabilization criteria, if you have something like that happen, it's an immediate go around. But no, these guys continued. The airplane the speed was fluctuating a lot. The airplane was pitching up and down. Not a stable situation at all. But they continued, and unfortunately they crashed on landing, as you can see. So not a good thing. As the crash happened, 1 of the pilots died. The other 2 were severely injured, but then they did survive. But why did this happen? Well, number of factors. First of all, we said they came from the Airbus from the Airbus. They're going to fly the Challenger. It's a different aeroplane. They weren't that experienced. I think when you intend to operate into airports like Aspen, you should do some simulator training specific to that airfield. And in the simulator, you can experience hot weather in the summer, cold, icy wind shear stuff in the winter. You can play all those scenarios during your simulator detail into Aspen. I think that should have been done. Also, going into Aspen, 2 pilots flying with only 14 hours in the airplane, that I don't think is a good idea. Then I think ego played into it when the guy on the jump seat said, try another approach. Bear in mind that when you are up front and you're the captain of the flight on the flight plan, you are responsible. So even if the guy on the jump seat says go for another approach, but you don't feel comfortable, it's your decision. You're the captain. Now we're talking here about experienced people that made this mistake. So, you know, I'm all for, you know, airline guys, very well prepared, transiting, having flown maybe the airlines and private jets. It brings a lot more experience to the table. But again, in this specific scenario, these 2 guys had airline experience, but they still got themselves into a situation which caused a crash, and the airplane was a total write-off. So, you know, a number of things played into this accident. And I think ego was one of them. When the guy pushed them to try the second approach, when they saw that the airspeed was all over the place, they shouldn't have got to the point where they were over the runway. Now, remember when I've talked about stabilization in my video about stabilization, and if you haven't seen that, click on the link above. When they got to 1,000 feet, which was, they were in instrument meteorological conditions, at 1,000 feet above the airfield, they saw that there was no stabilization. They should have immediately pressed the button and exit, or put the thrust levers forward. In this case, they didn't have an auto throttle in this airplane. Thrust levers forward and executed a go around, and then gone and landed at the alternate airfield. That's what they should have done. They didn't. So this is what happened in this situation. So again, stabilization criteria important. It has saved a lot of lives. And as I always say, you know, if you have to go around, or you're sitting in the back of a private jet and the pilots are getting close to the ground and then the plane goes back up in the air, they're doing this to keep you safe. There's a reason why the captain and his first officer decided to go around, and you have to trust them. If you're paying them the money to fly you safely, let them do their job. They know better. And that's really the message here on this accident. It was a positioning flight. They were pushed. They pushed themselves. They got into this situation. If they had applied the stabilization criteria, they would still be alive today. So that's all on this accident here. We'll have another one next week. And that's all from Fab Poli here. If you haven't subscribed to Biz Jet TV, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and comment below if you've got any suggestions for videos. Please let me know. And that's all from Fab Poli at Biz Jet TV. I'll see you on the next one.